try our second fly tying video, and in this case again, completely different techniques from the last one, different materials, but one that I always have in my box. Just really quickly going over the materials that we'll be using today. I'm going to be using some of this Semperfli nano silk. This stuff is just absolutely amazing. It will add zero bulk as you're tying to your fly at all, and it's almost unbreakable. So I use it an awful lot, except for when I need to build up some extra body. The fly we're tying today is going to be on a size 14. Usually I'm going to tie it a little bit smaller than that. This is a Scud hook. Actually, when I say a little smaller, I'm kind of exaggerating, because usually I do tie these in 18s and 20, 22, 24, itsy bitsy. And I've always caught a lot of fish with this fly, and this is just going to be a basic Scud pattern. So that was the thread. We'll be using silver this time, brassy size of ultra wire. We'll be using some scudback. I'm just going to do the 1/8, and we're going to do a little bit of trimming on it as we get started. Even though it's not necessary, sometimes I'm going to go ahead and grab a hold of my little bottle of super glue to use. In this case, it's Swapsy's Fire Cement, and of course it just wouldn't be a Scud without the South Scud or some Scud dubbing. And this is the rainbow that we'll be using today, and I use it. That's actually what I usually use the most when I'm tying up a Scud pattern. So we've got the Scud hook here in the vise. It is ready to go. One thing you'll see me do, and something I didn't realize you not only could do, but a lot of people do quite frequently, is repositioning a hook that's in the vise. I actually do that a lot now, as I've learned over the years. And not only that, but even, tying off thread and starting a whole new color of thread. When I first started tying, it was kind of get that thread on the shank of the hook, and then don't cut it off until you're absolutely done. And actually, it's a lot more flexible than that. So when I'm tying a Scud, I'm going to use this 0.02 or 0.2 lead wire. That just helps it get down in the water a little bit, and I'm actually going to use it to build up a little bulk on the fly as well. And you're going to want these wraps to be touching each other. I'm just going to put 4, 5, 6, or 7 or 8 wraps. There we go. Actually, I'm going to do, let's go 10. I keep forgetting that I'm tying this on a much larger hook than the one I'm used to. And friction method, I'm just going to rock this back and forth with the holding on to my lead so it doesn't come unwrapped, and it is now broken off, and it's on there. And I'll just take this back piece here, and I'll hold on to the lead again with my finger, just put pressure on it, and I'm just going to wiggle it back and forth. And lead is very soft metal. So now that I've got my lead on there, I can actually just push this right up to the eye of the hook, and you'll hopefully see how that just pulled all that lead together into a nice little bundle. That's not where I want it, but it squished it together. Now I can kind of slide it down to about where I do want it. We want it about there. You're going to see as we build the fly that we're going to have a kind of a football-shaped body, and I've done that in a variety of different ways before. So now we're going to go ahead and start with our nano silk. I'm going to start right behind. In this case, I'm fine starting right behind the eye of the hook. The one tip that I would have is, but if you can see my finger, I'm sure you can, it's very big. I'm going to actually leave my finger sitting right here as I start to work back. And the reason that I'm going to do that is to keep that lead from sliding down around the bend of the hook, because it will want to slide on you until you are fully secure. Okay, so now I've got my thread fully attached. I'll go back up through it a few times. And this is where, I mean, really, it's not like you're going to be fishing in a hurricane. Or at least I hope you're not. But occasionally just because I tend to be a little bit OCD, I don't fight a little bit. Here we go. You can, if you want, and again, this is not necessary at all, but just, I sometimes will just dab a tiny little bit of super glue on the top here, and that's just going to sink right down into those threads. After you get all the thread on here and you get all the wire and your scud back and everything else on there, that wire's not moving anywhere anyway, but it's just, something I do. So here's one of the problems with NanoSilk a little bit. See, I really want to build up some bulk here on both ends of this lead, so I have more of a transition. And since the NanoSilk doesn't leave much of a footprint, I end up using a lot of wraps. I probably should have used a different thread for today, but I really wanted to show you guys the NanoSilk that I just truly do love tying with the stuff. But you'll see here behind the lead, I'm trying to build up some bulk here just so that it's, I want a nice transition from the bend of the hook up, and then transitioning, it's going to transition to this little kind of fatter and then skinnier at the very end of the fly. So I'm just building up a little bit of extra bulk. And to be honest with you, now I'm wishing I hadn't put super glue on there, because the other thing I wanted to show you, and I probably will do here, is I'm just repositioning the fly, the hook and the vise. And that's because I'm going to start way back here, and I don't want all my material sliding off, and it's really much easier if I just go ahead and reposition kind of like that, and then I can move it back when I'm ready to. But I'm going to be tying material clear back here, and if I leave it on the angle that it was in, everything just wants to slide right around the bend. So I do that all the time when I'm tying now, repositioning that the hook in the vise. I mean, it's just kind of normal. I never used to do that before. So I've got that in there. I'm good with that. Once we get the dubbing on there, it's going to transition just fine. The next material we're going to put on is just we're going to put on our silver wire, and this is going to be our ribbing for the fly. So I've just got a little piece of silver, and I'm going to let me tighten up my vise a little bit so my rotary doesn't move quite so much. Again, I shouldn't say again, but I did. It's just what I do. I like to put my wire, the wire on the far side of the hook, and so I got my silver wire in there, and I'm going to just pull it backwards a little bit so that it's not sticking out over the eye of the hook. So you can see I've kind of got that nice and firmly locked in place, and I'm just going to come back down around the end of the hook here, or just right around the bend. This one goes, for me anyway, when I tie it, I take it a little bit deeper than maybe a lot of other flies. So that's now, my silver wire is exactly where I want it. The next material I'm going to put on is going to be my scudback, and hopefully you can see that. It's clear and it's very stretchy. And when I'm tying on with the scudback, one of the first things that I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and make a cut on it, maybe or two. And I'm hoping you'll be able to see that pretty clearly here in the video. But basically, I'm just making a nice pointed end. It makes it a lot easier to tie this material in. I am going to want that centered over the middle of the hook. And you can move things around as you're tying it down, but you can see, I've got one thread wrapped down, and that's not going anywhere now. But as I move back, I'm actually going to be stretching. Don't pull it to stretch it until you've got that locked down, or it'll just come right off the hook. So I'm just going to kind of stretch it, but I want it to stay right in the very center over the top of this fly. I don't want it to go over on this side or on the side towards me. So I am gonna, when I pull it and stretch it just a little bit, one of the things it does is it keeps it centered. The other thing it does is it actually will tie a smaller amount of material because I've stretched it back here at the back of the hook. Okay, so I've got that in there. So I've got my thin skin, I've got my lead, I've got my silver wire. We're kind of ready to go to town. I can just, I'm just cleaning up a little bit. Completely OCD and completely unnecessary because we're just going to be covering all this up here in just a second. Okay, so now we're going to put some dubbing on the fly, and I'm going to just go ahead and tilt or rotate my vise a little bit. Hopefully you'll be able to see a little bit better if I do that. And I'm going to just leave my thread dangling there. And then I'm going to grab my little dubbing pack here. And the trick with dubbing, there are several, is that a little bit goes a long way, and it's a lot easier to add dubbing than it is to take dubbing off. So I'm just going to pull this out, and then if you can see that, Kelly Gallup always does this wonderful thing with a superfine where you kind of let go of it and it floats down. You get an idea of how sparse that is. And the idea is that I'm going to be twisting this around my thread here to create the body of my fly. So each one of these individual fibers, I'm going to want to wrap around this thread, okay? And so I haven't waxed my thread. That's something you can do. Like this, I'll just take like a wax stick and put a little bit of wax on there. Now you just run it up and down with my fingers so I don't have big globs. I usually end up licking my fingers a little bit just to get them a little bit wet. And then just start, twisting this on. You can see starting to make a little dubbing, what we call a dubbing rope or dubbing noodle, whatever you want to call it. And I tighten this up as I go. That's the other thing that I've done. So I'm going to start here and make sure that I get a couple of good turns clear at the very back end of this fly here with this dubbing. And that's fine with me. And then I'm going to start moving it up and see what I mean by that. As I bring it up, I'm going to kind of twist it a little bit just to tighten it up, because it will kind of loosen as you kind of move up the hook. It's one of the benefits of a dubbing loop, and I'll show you that at some point in the future as well. And this is, again, the idea of it's better to not have too much than not enough. It's really easy to grab another little bunch of dubbing here and get it on, and make sure we have enough to make it all the way to the very end of the fly here. So got that kind of a little thick, but that's okay. So we're gonna, there's our dubbing. We're just gonna pick up where we left off, and I do want it thicker through here. So I'm perfectly fine with this being a little bit bulky right here. Where I don't want it bulky is when I get closer to the eye of the hook, because again, you crowd the eye of the hook, and it makes it almost impossible to get a nice clean head and end on your fly. Okay, so you can see I've got that on there. It looks shaggy, which is good. That's actually exactly what I want. But you can also see that I've got plenty of space left to tie, and I've got some more materials, obviously, to put onto this fly. So my next step is I'm going to take my my scudback, and that's why it's called scudback. I want it centered right over the top of the fly here. I'll pull it a little tight, not overly tight, just to get that first wrap in there. And then I'm going to take a look at things before I cinch everything completely down to make sure, yeah, that's about where I want it. So now I'm going to just, take a couple of thread wraps here. And I will pull these a little bit tighter now because I've got that scud back where I want it. I'm going to pull this elasticy scudback back, and it'll reveal the eye of the hook here. And I'm just doing that so I can throw in a couple of thread wraps back here as well. So there you go. We've got that scudback on there attached. We'll probably have enough to do another fly, actually. So I'm going to clip that off now, and when I clip it, I do pull it pretty tight like that, just like a rubber band, right? You know, that way when you clip it, it kind of sucks right back in underneath of those thread wraps that you just made, and it leaves a really nice clean end. So we'll finish off with our silver wire, and it's just going to be the ribbing or the segmentation of this scud or sow bug or whatever you want to call it. And try to make these wraps even. And what I do is as I come over the top and then come over the back side, I pull down towards the floor pretty hard, and it helps make that nymph skin or scud back kind of balloon out a little bit and give you that really buggy sow bug kind of a look. Okay, so now we're just kind of working our way back up. Same thing. Not using pliers. I'm just using my fingers. I could use pliers. Pulling it down nice and tight to kind of balloon that out a little bit. Now we're getting closer to the front, where things will start to slip a little bit, but that's okay. And there we are. Now I'm clear up at the eye of the hook. I'm just going to take a couple of wraps here to lock that down. A couple of wraps in front of the eye. I'll just go throw a couple more here in the back as well. That's really not going to go anywhere, and so hopefully you can see pretty clearly it's made a really nice pattern in here, and by pulling it down tight, we've got this kind of bulging body. And for all intents and purposes, the fly's done. I'm gonna friction helicopter this off. I wish I had a little bit more. Just it's kind of hard to grab there, but so it'll probably take me didn't take me much at all. Sorry. And this is again where you can. I'd mentioned before. I'm going to reposition. Takes me all of 15 seconds to reposition, but now I've got a much better angle on the head of the fly. It's a little bit messy up there. I'm going to pull some of those fibers back. Again, that's just OCD. It's not required. And I am just going to, build up a tiny little head here. And you can actually tie these from lots of different combinations of dubbing colors. You can use different colors of thread. You can use different colors of scud back. So, you can tie a whole lot of varieties of these. I'm going to get my trusty whip finisher out here, and I'm just going to go ahead and whip finish this little guy off here. 3 or 4, 5, 6, doesn't matter. You don't need to count them. I've got a nice head there. That's not going anywhere. I'll go ahead and cut my thread at this point. So there is one other thing that I typically do here with a scud pattern is I am going to use, you can use Velcro. I like to use these brushes like this, and I don't want to brush the top where my scud back is. I want underneath, but what I want to do is get some of these, this dubbing fiber pulled loose. So I'm just going to basically kind of underneath the hook, kind of in one direction, push down just to, pull some of those fibers out. You want to be careful about getting too close to the head, because I've done that a lot too, where you end up losing your thread that made the head of the fly if you brush it too hard. But here we go. We're just brushing it, a little bit on either side, straight down. Not a lot of force, but you can see how now this is starting to look, how that makes that just look so much more buggy. I had an audience there for a second. I am down in my basement, and that's where my man cave is. And I thought I heard a noise, and I looked up, and my kids were both there standing there. Awkward. Actually, I'm getting kind of used to it. Usually my daughter will come down, and I get so focused, and usually when I'm not recording like I'm recording here, I'll have music blasting, usually some rock music, some grunge, or something like that. So I'm zoned in, and I've got my music on, and she'll come down and stand there for a few minutes, and I don't even know she's there, and then she'll say Dad, and scares the hell out of me, and I lose I guess maybe 3 or 4 months off of my life from being scared. So anyway, just going to use my sewing pin again, and I'm just going to dab a little bit of cement here on the head here of this scud. So here's our scud. So this is, again, I love this pattern. Very easy to tie. We've got it weighted down with some lead. We started out with that, and then went to the thread, and tied in our materials. It looks kind of like what around here we kind of call potato bugs, but these actually live inside in the water, and they're almost kind of like a freshwater shrimp kind of looking thing. That's what we pulled that dubbing out to create little legs. I trimmed those off a little bit. Then we've got that nice shell on the top with our wire pulled down hard, so it gives it that appearance. Like I said, I use it all the time, usually much smaller than this, and I've caught fish here in Utah left and right with this. Same thing up in Idaho, up on Henry's Fork, or up on Henry's Lake Outlet. It's a good go-to fly.